My friends, I need you to stop what you're doing right now and listen carefully, because what I'm about to share with you could mean extra money coming your way, and I don't want you to miss out on a single dollar that rightfully belongs to you. You've worked hard your entire life, you've paid into the system for decades, and now there's talk of something new happening that could put additional funds directly into your bank account. Now, I know you're probably thinking, here we go again, another promise that sounds too good to be true. And believe me, I understand that skepticism because we've all been disappointed before. But this time, something different is happening in Washington, and it's something that could affect your monthly income in ways we haven't seen in years. President Trump has made an announcement about what he's calling a dividend check, and seniors across America are asking the same questions you're probably asking right now. Is this real? How much money are we talking about? When will these checks arrive? And most importantly, am I eligible to receive one? I've spent hours going through the official statements, reading the policy proposals, and breaking down exactly what this means for people like you who are living on Social Security, SSI, SSDI, or VA benefits. So grab yourself a cup of coffee, get comfortable, and let me walk you through everything you need to know about this potential payment, because understanding the details could mean the difference between getting this money or missing out completely. Let me start by explaining exactly what this dividend check announcement is all about, because there's been a lot of confusion and misinformation floating around out there. According to recent statements from President Trump and his administration, they're proposing a new type of payment that would go directly to American citizens as a way of sharing in what they're calling the prosperity dividend from various government revenues and economic policies. Now, the terminology here is important, my friends, because this isn't technically a traditional Social Security benefit increase or a one-time stimulus check like we saw during the pandemic. Instead, this proposal is being framed as a dividend payment, similar to how you might receive dividends from stocks or investments, except in this case, it's based on the idea that American citizens should share in the financial benefits generated by federal policies, tariffs, and economic growth. The proposal suggests that eligible Americans could receive anywhere from $300 to $1,200, depending on their filing status, income level, and benefit category. For a single person receiving Social Security retirement benefits, the proposed amount is around $600, while married couples filing jointly could potentially receive up to $1,200. If you're receiving SSI or SSDI, the payment structure might be slightly different, but you would still qualify under most versions of this proposal that are currently being discussed. Now, let's talk about who exactly would be eligible for these dividend checks, because this is where things get really important for you to pay attention. According to the initial framework that's been outlined, eligibility would primarily be based on your citizenship status, your tax filing status, and whether you're currently receiving federal benefits. If you're a United States citizen or legal permanent resident who has filed taxes in the previous year, you would likely qualify for at least some portion of this dividend payment. For those of you receiving Social Security retirement benefits, the good news is that you would automatically be considered eligible without having to file any additional paperwork or applications. The same goes for people receiving SSI benefits, SSDI benefits, or VA disability compensation. The system would use the information that the Social Security Administration and the Department of Veterans Affairs already have on file to determine your eligibility and process your payment. However, and this is crucial, there are some potential exclusions and limitations that you need to be aware of. If you owe back taxes to the IRS, there's a possibility that your dividend payment could be offset or reduced to cover those outstanding debts. Similarly, if you're currently in default on federal student loans or have certain other types of federal debts, your payment might be subject to garnishment under the Treasury Offset Program. For those of you who have outstanding child support obligations, that's another area where your dividend check could potentially be reduced before it reaches you. Let me give you a real-life example of how this might work, because I know numbers and policy talk can get confusing. Imagine you're 72 years old, you're receiving about $1,800 a month in Social Security retirement benefits, and you file your taxes as a single individual. Under this dividend proposal, you would potentially be eligible for a $600 payment. Now, let's say you don't owe any back taxes, you don't have any federal debts, and you're current on all your obligations. In that case, you would receive the full $600 deposited directly into the same bank account where your Social Security benefits currently go. The payment would show up as a separate deposit, likely labeled something like U.S. Treasury Dividend or Economic Dividend Payment, so you'd be able to identify it clearly on your bank statement. On the other hand, if you have a federal tax debt of $200, the Treasury might offset that amount first, which means you'd receive $400 instead of the full $600. This is why it's so important to know your financial situation and understand what debts or obligations might affect your payment amount. Now, I know many of you are wondering about the timeline because when it comes to getting extra money, timing is everything, especially when you're on a fixed income and every dollar matters. Based on the announcements and the legislative process that would need to happen, here's what we're looking at. First, this dividend check proposal would need to be formally introduced as legislation in Congress, which means it would have to pass both the House of Representatives and the Senate before it could become law. President Trump has indicated that he wants to make this a priority, but as we all know, getting anything through Congress can take time, even when there's political support for it. The most optimistic timeline suggests that if the legislation were introduced and fast-tracked, we could potentially see payments going out sometime in late spring or early summer, probably around May or June. However, more realistic estimates put the timeline closer to late summer or early fall, possibly August or September, depending on how quickly Congress can move and how much debate there is around the details of the program. If you're receiving Social Security or SSI benefits through direct deposit, you would likely be in the first wave of payments because the government already has your banking information on file and can process your payment automatically. Those of you who still receive paper checks in the mail might have to wait a few extra weeks after the initial electronic payments go out. Let me address something that I've been hearing a lot of concern about in the comments and messages I receive, and that's whether accepting this dividend payment would affect your other benefits. This is a legitimate worry, especially for those of you on SSI, because we know that SSI has strict income and asset limits, and any additional money you receive could potentially push you over those limits and affect your monthly benefit amount. From what we're seeing in the proposal language, the intention is to structure these dividend payments so that they would not be counted as income for purposes of determining SSI eligibility or benefit amounts. This would be similar to how the stimulus payments during the pandemic were treated, where they were explicitly excluded from income calculations for means-tested programs. However, and this is important, if you receive the dividend payment and you don't spend it within the same month, it could potentially be counted as a resource or asset in the following month, which could affect your SSI eligibility if it pushes your total assets over the $2,000 limit for individuals or $3,000 limit for couples. So here's my practical advice if you're on SSI. If and when you receive this dividend payment, plan ahead for how you're going to use it, and consider spending it within the same calendar month on things you need, like paying down debt, buying necessary items, or covering expenses that you've been putting off. That way, it won't be sitting in your bank account at the beginning of the next month where it could be counted as a resource. For those of you receiving SSDI benefits, the situation is a bit different and generally more favorable. SSDI doesn't have the same strict asset limits that SSI does, so receiving a dividend payment shouldn't affect your eligibility for disability benefits at all. The same goes for Social Security retirement benefits and VA disability compensation. These programs aren't means-tested in the same way, so additional income from a dividend payment wouldn't reduce your monthly benefit amount or disqualify you from receiving benefits. However, there is one potential issue that some of you might face, and that has to do with the windfall elimination provision, or WEP, and the government pension offset, or GPO. Now, I don't think the dividend payment itself would trigger WEP or GPO, because it's not technically pension income from work where you didn't pay Social Security taxes, but this is something that we'll need to watch closely as the details get finalized. If you're currently affected by WEP or GPO and you're concerned about how this dividend might interact with those provisions, I'd recommend calling your local Social Security office or speaking with a benefits counselor who can give you guidance specific to your situation. Let's talk about the tax implications of this dividend payment, because this is another area where you need to be prepared and understand what to expect. Based on how similar payments have been structured in the past, there are two possibilities for how these dividends might be taxed. The first possibility is that they would be treated as non-taxable, similar to the stimulus payments we received during the pandemic. If that's the case, you wouldn't have to report the dividend payment as income on your tax return, and it wouldn't increase your tax liability for the year. The second possibility is that the dividend could be treated as taxable income, similar to how your Social Security benefits are partially taxable if your combined income exceeds certain thresholds. If the dividend is taxable, you would need to add it to your other income when calculating your taxes for the year, and depending on your total income, you might owe federal income tax on some or all of it. For those of you who are already having federal taxes withheld from your Social Security benefits, this could mean that you owe a little bit more when you file your return, or it could reduce the refund you were expecting. My advice is to set aside about 15 to 20% of the dividend payment, just in case it turns out to be taxable, so you're not caught off guard next tax season. It's better to be prepared and have that money available than to get hit with an unexpected tax bill. Now, let me share some smart strategies for how you might want to use this dividend payment once it arrives, because making wise decisions with unexpected money can really improve your financial situation. First and foremost, if you have any high-interest debt, like credit card balances, using the dividend to pay that down should be your top priority. Credit card interest rates are incredibly high right now, often 20% or more, so every dollar you pay toward those balances saves you from paying even more in interest charges down the road. If you don't have credit card debt but you've been struggling to cover certain expenses, consider using the dividend to get caught up on things like utility bills, medical bills, or prescription costs. One of the best uses for this money, if you can manage it, would be to build or replenish your emergency fund. I know that's not the most exciting thing to do with extra money, but having even a few $100s set aside for unexpected expenses can prevent you from having to rely on high-interest loans or credit cards when something goes wrong. Another smart option is to use the dividend to prepay certain bills for the next few months. For example, you could prepay your auto insurance, your home insurance, or even make advance payments on rent if your landlord allows it. This essentially gives you a little breathing room in your budget for the upcoming months, which can reduce stress and give you more flexibility with your regular Social Security or SSI income. For those of you who are in reasonably good financial shape and don't have urgent needs for the dividend money, consider investing it in things that will improve your quality of life or reduce your expenses going forward. Maybe you need new eyeglasses, but you've been putting it off because of the cost. Maybe your hearing aids need to be replaced or upgraded. These are health-related expenses that directly impact your daily life, and using the dividend for these purposes is a smart investment in yourself. Another option is to use the money to make your home safer or more comfortable. Simple modifications like installing grab bars in the bathroom, improving lighting to prevent falls, or buying a medical alert system can make a huge difference in your safety and independence as you age. If you're trying to reduce your monthly expenses, you might consider using the dividend to buy energy-efficient appliances or make home improvements that will lower your utility bills over time. Yes, that's a bigger upfront cost, but it pays dividends, no pun intended, in lower monthly expenses for years to come. My friends, I want to be completely honest with you about something, and that's the uncertainty that still surrounds this dividend proposal. While President Trump has announced this idea and it's gaining attention, it's not a done deal yet. There's a legislative process that has to happen, and that means debates, negotiations, and potentially changes to the proposal before it becomes reality. I'm telling you about it now because I want you to be informed and prepared, but I also want you to manage your expectations and not count on this money until it's officially approved and the payment schedule is announced. Keep watching for updates from official government sources, listen to trusted channels like this one, and be skeptical of anyone who asks you to pay a fee or provide personal information to claim your dividend payment. This is a benefit that, if it goes through, will be administered automatically by the federal government. You won't need to hire anyone, pay any fees, or fill out complicated applications. The government already has your information if you're receiving Social Security, SSI, SSDI, or VA benefits, and they'll process your payment the same way they process your regular monthly benefits. In the meantime, stay informed, stay patient, and keep managing your finances as wisely as you can with the income you currently have. I'll be here to bring you updates as soon as we get more concrete information about when these dividend payments will be approved, how much they'll actually be, and exactly when you can expect to see that money in your account. If you found this information helpful, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any important updates about your benefits. Drop a comment below and let me know if you have specific questions about how this dividend might affect your personal situation, and I'll do my best to address those concerns in upcoming videos. Remember, my friends, you've earned these benefits through a lifetime of work and contributions, and my mission is to help you understand and maximize every dollar that's available to you. Take care of yourselves, watch your mailboxes and bank accounts, and I'll see you in the next update with more important information about your Social Security, SSI, SSDI, and VA benefits. God bless you all, and thank you for trusting me to help you navigate these complicated benefit programs. Stay tuned, stay informed, and don't miss out on what could be coming your way soon.